Good evening, Hex Mercenaries, and welcome to episode 49 of Two Turns Ahead, which we are calling Constructed Foremen. It is Saturday, February the 28th. Tonight we discussed the conclusion to Hex Tech's Open, which we just finished this evening, as well as a deck JJ didn't quite have ready to go for the tournament, or wasn't quite ready for it to make its first official appearance, but will be on the podcast. And if we get time, we'll talk about some traps that may exist in Set 1 drafting. Let me introduce the host. I got distracted for a second. Our second co-host is the happy-go-lucky, hardworking hepcat Nicholas Podrasky, who's better known throughout the community as Penta Chills. I've been singing to him off-key all week just so he would be aggressive enough for the podcast. Penta, was the last deck you've drafted?
Oh, geez. It's been a while since I've drafted. This is probably the longest time it's been since I've drafted. It was on stream the other day. It was on Friday. I drafted. I don't remember.
That was yesterday. How did you forget yesterday?
Oh wow, it was yesterday. So I literally have not slept since that moment. So that's kind of an important factor here. Whatever I drafted, if I was going to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, I would put it like a 6, maybe a 7. And I got hosed by somebody playing the equivalent of Kaldheim's deck list from the recent tournaments. Like, they were playing a draft. They were just like, oh, here's a Scraptech brawler on my Hex Geode after I played a Gearsmith and a Charge Bot, and now I'm swinging for 12 on turn 2. I didn't even get to play the game. I was just watching someone else play Solitaire, and I was like, okay.
Excellent. Well, you may have already heard him, but our third co-host is JuzamJedi, who hosts both the 5-Star channel with Penta Chills during the Cup season, especially the last Cup that we had, the Ruby Cup, as well as the upcoming Sapphire Cup, I believe, though we haven't confirmed that, as well as the prominent member of the Dragonborn Guild. JJ, if you could give an average skilled player one word of advice about Sealed, what would it be?
I would say most people know already to play to your bombs and play to the shards that look like they have the most depth to them. Probably the best thing is make sure that you pay attention to your curve in Sealed, even though it is Sealed. And in some games and some formats, Sealed is a slower format, but in this format, it is still relatively tempo-based, and you can't fall too far behind. So make sure that you have some early game, and that you're not just trying to play for, answering their bombs and card advantage and playing your own bombs as well. It's important that you have a good curve in this format too.
You mentioned previously that that's been your biggest barrier in Sealed, that you just have had bad curves going in and get blown out by faster, aggressive decks in Hex.
Yes, I had. We've done some good. We have good discussion in our league chat. We had a pool where I went like 1-3 with it, and I knew it was good enough that it should have been able to do better than that. And I talked about it with some teammates afterwards. And that was the biggest piece of advice that they had for me. They said, hey, look, if you had gone with this other build, I went Diamond Sapphire because I had lots of good ways to answer any bomb. Like, if anybody had ever put a Zakiir down on me, I had good ways to answer it. I had lots of good card advantage, but I got ran over by some aggressive wild decks early on because I didn't have enough good early game tempo. And we talked about some different builds that I could have gone with instead. There was either a wild Ruby or like a Ruby Diamond build of that particular pool that I could have built instead. That would have had good tempo and also been able to answer the late game bombs as well. So that is something that we had talked about off the podcast before, and that is a piece of advice that I will share with the listeners now too.
Excellent. I just wrote that down as something we should talk about in our, before said maybe our 51st episode would be the one devoted to Sealed, and something I didn't think about doing, which is kind of obvious, is to just open up 6 packs, give them to the panelists beforehand, and have all of us build a deck out of it, and then talk about the differences, and that'll probably be a good way to generate discussion. My biggest issue, this is not a Sealed episode, by the way, but I'm happy with the question because it's actually into some decent discussion. My biggest problem in Sealed is that I often get pools that are about half leaning towards dwarves and half leaning towards humans, and it's really a judgment call of should this be a dwarf deck, should this be a human deck, or should it be quasi both, and often it comes down to which one's faster or which one has better removal.
Yeah, I think most of the Sealed pools where I've done the best with them have been dwarf builds or partial dwarf builds. usually being able to have recovery specialist with the crank rocket does a lot of work in sealed. And I mean, if you have either of those, and especially in multiples, you should heavily consider playing Sapphire Ruby.
So, before we get to our formal topics in a second, we have a couple different community news updates, things that we want to talk about. The first one I want to say this is not 100% guaranteed, but we're at the 90% level. It's something we have been working on for a month. And I only want to say it's not 100% guaranteed because there's some technical things we still need to finalize before it happens, but it looks like it's very much going to happen. Next week, Penta and I get to talk with a third panelist for the podcast, Mr. Corey Jones himself, for the 50th episode. He's agreed to come on, and so we're going to try our best to make sure this happens. So,
Yay!
If you have any burning questions that you would like to ask Mr. Jones, Corey, please put them on either Reddit or the post on 2 Turns Ahead for this podcast, and we'll take some of the best questions, the ones that are going to generate some discussion with Corey. And the type of questions we're really interested in asking him are not just the state of the game or what's going to be published in the next month or 2 months. And of course, everyone wants to know that stuff, but there's only so much you can say about that. But we also want to get some more general insight. And we will be doing things like opening a pack and drafting with him, like we do with all of our panelists, just to get some idea of what Corey Jones is thinking when he's looking at the same cards that we're looking at. Anything else we should ask the community for, Penta, before we go live next week? I know I just sprung it on you.
No, because I was just thinking about how you covered most of it already, and I still don't know what personal questions I want to ask Corey. It's kind of a very exciting thing that hasn't really settled in. That it's only a possible week away. Fingers crossed that 10% nonsense doesn't come to bite us.
Ask who is he wearing?
Yeah. Things about the current state of Hex, I suppose, are probably decent questions because I mean, I realize that you already kind of touched on this, but we're past the point where everybody was involved with the Kickstarter, and we're still not at the point where the entire player base exists. So maybe questions focused on right now are things that they could shoot at us to ask Corey.
Sure.
That's kind of a roundabout answer to your question.
This
entirely.
podcast, no, it's fine. This podcast goes up probably Tuesday afternoon, but we'll shoot for Tuesday morning. Of course, we're recording a day later than we normally do, so that's probably going to push it back a bit. So that will give you 2.5 to 3 days to shoot us questions, and we'll call and pick the best ones, and hopefully we will be able to ask your question. The other community news regarding to what we're up to is that, of course, the Sapphire Cup will be coming up on March 14th through the 15th, and we will have the official announcement for that hopefully a day before this podcast comes out, so you'll have a link to that on the podcast notes itself. This is a fantastic cup. We've already mentioned that it will be the first actual money tournament in Hex's history, because first place will get $250, second place $150, and third and fourth will each get $50 apiece. It is being backed by Colin, the Exalted community member who wants to make this a huge tournament, and I think we might be getting very close to our 256 person cap with this prize pool. I mean, we haven't done sign-ups yet, but I'm just guessing a lot of people will be signing up for it. So I'm excited about that.
Is that the most that we can handle on Challenge? Is that the problem?
Yes.
Okay.
And the way that works is that we will have, there's a waiting list that works in Challenge, and if people do not register and then confirm, those who do not confirm get dropped, and those who confirmed in the waiting list will automatically be added to the game. And so I think we will be fine. I'll assume we'll be fine. If not, we just may have a sign-up cap. But yeah, so sign up early for that. That's what I probably would suggest.
Man,
256 people only.
My stomach just rolled over with the absolute terror of more problems with Challenge.
Still working on solutions.
In better news, even if we do get 256 people, I'm reasonably sure that our tournament will run, which is good news.
That's true. We will be
Not
able to still
related
play
to
the
that.
proving
Why are
grounds.
you guys laughing? I was just saying that I think we can fight. Oh, okay, no, that's fine.
Well, I just wanted to say that is not the segue for the next topic, because this is about a seal that did not fire this afternoon, but a tournament that did fire is the Hextech Open, which had a total of 48 people. It was a 500 plat entry fee that paid out 100 or 1,000 plat to first, or no, 10,000 plat to first place. I always get that number wrong, and Matt Miller will be sure to call me on that later when he hears the podcast, as he does. So 10,000 plat to first place, and other plat awards to to the other places in the top places, and both JuzamJedi and Penta participate in the tournament, so we want to talk about those decks and their success.
If we can call my involvement participation, sure.
It's a form of participation. So let's go ahead and start with JJ, who ran what I believe is a team deck, right?
That's right. Yeah, I played the I deck. It's a it's a deck that the Dragonborn Guild has played several times, and the version that I played today, the main deck, was card for card the same one, other than I changed a few of the shards around because I wasn't happy with the distribution there. But otherwise, it's just the same main deck team list. There was, and I don't want to talk about too much yet, but there was a different variation that one of the other guildmates played instead and was a bit more successful with. Some of the changes that he made was he played Feral Domination and Jadim, which were pretty good for him. But we can maybe talk about that a bit more later.
Sure. So how did your rounds go? What were you expecting to see? What did you see?
So I definitely expected... I think you guys hit it pretty well last time on the podcast as far as what to expect. I definitely expected to play against Gorefeast. And more than anything, because of the Gorefeast matchup is a big part of the reason why I ended up playing what I played today, because I has a reasonable Gorefeast matchup while still being very good against a lot of the control decks and other decks in the field, the random decks. So I was pretty happy with that, and it was just solid in testing. There was another deck which we'll talk about in a little bit, which I decided not to play because its matchup with the Gorefeast decks was so poor, especially game one. So that's basically why I ended up doing it. I wanted to make sure I had good game against the random decks and also have at least a reasonable matchup against the Gorefeast deck.
As a item of curiosity, how good is the matchup against Blood Diamond with the Ruby Wild Eye deck?
I feel like it's very favorable. I'm quite happy to play against Blood Diamond. I played against it today, and do we want to talk about all of my matches now, or should we?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, this would be a great time to do it. We'll do the same for Penta afterwards.
So I played round one. I played against a Mono Blood Benoshi mid-range / control deck. In that matchup, the Filk Master Moss, Rootfather, and Colossus were very good. My opponent had Extinction, and he also had Discard with Inquisition. But overall, the Filk it squashes the Benoshi champion power, and it was also very good with Master Moss as well. And so that matchup, I ended up winning pretty easily. Round number two, I actually lost to my teammate, who ended up making it into the finals. He was playing he's the one that I was alluding to that was playing the same deck list except with Jadim in it, and it was quite the strong trump in game number two that we played, because it got to a game state where both of us had got to 9 resources, and we could keep trading our Wrathwood Colossus at each other. But the problem was he had Jadim in play, so he was going to win that damage race because he kept adding the 9 cost to his Jadim's power and toughness on every swing, and I had no way to deal with the Jadim, at least not at that point. I had Argus in my reserves for the matchup, but he had the Jadim that he got into play first, and I never even saw the Argus. So
you only have 4 cards in your entire deck that could potentially answer that.
Yeah, Jadim is real bad. It's real bad, and the reserves, I had some cards, but yeah, it was...
Yeah, I can't see your reserves on the list I'm looking at. I'm just... And for like the sake of context, I know we'll talk about your deck list later, but I'm specifically referencing Zakiir if you get lucky.
Right.
2 of, and if you put an Eternal Guardian down on the board, I suppose you deal with Jadim.
That's right. Yeah, that's...
Did you do much internal testing with the variation of the deck list, or is this something that he did on his own?
Yeah, he did that one. He told me about it before the tournament started, but I decided not to make the last second change just because I hadn't tested it personally. Wish I had done it in retrospect, because it was definitely very good in the mirror match there.
Well, I mean, that's a important lesson, is that if you are making some changes to a deck and they change the way the deck plays, it may still be, even if it's the best version of the deck, it may still be suboptimal for you to do that, because you may not know well enough how to play it, and you will be making poorer plays than you would have if you just played the base list you were used to.
Yeah, it was more a question of comfort level for today.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I think that happens quite a bit when players see a deck list, they pick it up, and they end up losing a bunch of times with it, and they think the deck is terrible, and it's just you need to play with the deck a bunch of times, even slight alterations several times to figure out how they solve the puzzle that your deck is trying to solve. But go on.
Then round 3, I actually played against Elysian. He was playing a Blood Ruby. I think it was Extinction Feast. I didn't actually see him play the Gore Feast, but he had Poke as his champion, and he had Jag, so I'm assuming that it was hiding in there somewhere. That was actually the least interactive match that I had, because game 1 he got stuck on resources, and then game 2 he flooded out while I had a pretty average hand and was pretty easily able to win that one. Unfortunately,
Are you still there?
For him, but you got to take the good kismet when you can. On round 4, I played. It was an interesting brew. It was a Tri-Shard life gain deck. He had Gozog as his champion. The only wild that I saw was Sight of the Sun, but he had other than that, it looked like the kind of typical Blood Diamond Paladin type of deck that we've probably seen before. But he had Sight of the Sun with it. But in both of his games, he ended up being a little bit resource light as well. I got a Scraptech into Arborean Rootfather relatively quickly game 1, and then game 2 he had a totem and he never got more than 3 shards, so I won that one pretty easily.
Okay.
Then round number 5, I played against Hapson. He was playing the Salt Shaker deck, if I could say it correctly here. Game 1 was really weird. So I won the toss. I made my first play. I don't remember if I played Howling Brave or whatever. On his turn, he just F10 through the whole turn. Just skipped it entirely. And I just typed, oops, ? Into it, and he just ends up discarding his card and asking if we could restart, because, I mean, it was obviously an accident. He just went through his turn, and not sure entirely why. I think I probably would have won that one regardless, because my hand was pretty strong, and he just started with a Ruby and a Crackling Vortex, but...
Did you allow the restart, or
no? I ended up playing that one, because it was... Man, my hand was so good.
Right.
It was unfortunate, but we did actually play through that one.
I mean, it's understandable. In a competitive environment with real prizes on the line, if your opponent makes a mistake, that's part of the game. There's not much you can do about it.
Yeah, it wasn't like this was a bug. I mean, it was clearly an accident. It was just... Yeah. Game number 2 was lopsided in the other direction. This is where the Salt Shaker comes into play. So Hapson got... he tunneled Reese on turn 2, although I didn't know it at the time. I assumed it was actually a spy. I slow played it. I ended up putting one of my Scraptechs in play and tunneling the other one to set up for a later turn. And I wasn't attacking when I could have, because I was trying to play around the Gore Feast that could have potentially been there. But what ended up happening instead was Reese came up on turn 6, created a jank bot at random, and then he ended up playing a jank bot as well, and a Mastery of Time. He had a Mastery of Time off of the jank bot, and then he had a Mastery of Time from hand as well. So it was pretty easily won in his favor on that one. And then game 3 was very interesting. It was a long game, but the most important part of that game was that he had what I assume was out of the reserves Masked Polymorph Dingler. I did keep a Eye of Creation in my hand just in case he had some shenanigans like that. But it was definitely sad to see my Eternal Guardian become a Dingler. I ended up going for the Eye of Creation desperation mode, but I did not get there with that, and so I ended up losing to that trump card there.
I'm pretty sure that's a card that was a last-minute addition from Hapson, and he told people about it, and other people did not include it. Like, I believe that was part of the reason why Hapson ends up beating Future in the top 8, which we're getting to shortly, is because he had Polymorph Dingler, and Future did not have access to it.
Yep, it was a very good trump in our matchup, that's for sure.
Sorry,
It's a singleton.
Mass
It's a
Polymorph
singleton.
Dingler. Yeah.
Oh, it's a singleton. Oh, even better.
Yep, it's a singleton. Just thought I'd throw that out there for you.
Shaking that salt.
Look,
It's fine. It was good.
I mean,
It was good.
it wasn't to shake the salt. I didn't include it because it was a singleton, and I was like, nah, that'll never come in handy.
Yeah, it was actually quite good. And then the round 6, I played against Zabuli playing Blood Diamond Control. Game 1, he ended up winning because he got a living totem that I couldn't answer. I never drew any of my... I never got my Eternal Guardian into play. I never got my Crazed Squirrel Titan in time to be able to answer it. Actually, that's not true. I had a Crazed Squirrel Titan, but he had the Hope Heart Unicorn down before I could answer it. So he's able to protect it.
That was one of my favorite things with Blood Diamond versus Eye of Creation, is trying to race that Crazed Squirrel Titan.
Right.
Where you're just like pumping every turn. It's like, hopefully they miss a resource or something and I don't have to worry about it.
And I didn't play this card today, but I will say from watching some of the finals and talking to my guildmate afterwards, Feral Domination would have probably made a difference in that one, because Feral Domination says, hey, you know what, Wrathwood Master Moss, now it's going to be a Squirrel Titan. Basically, Zakiir, Filk, pretty much every big troop in the deck, other than Eternal Guardian, which you don't want to fight most of the time, but all the other big troops in the deck are able to be Crazed Squirrel Titans. So as long as you activate it at least one time, which you should, because I has tons of troops that can do it, it probably would be enough to make the difference, because you could play Feral Domination on turn 2, you could play Wrathwood Master Moss on turn 3, and if that somehow didn't answer it because they had a Hope Heart Unicorn out, you'd be able to play the Filk Ape on the next turn, maybe another Master Moss, right? And then you're able to take out that early totem.
And Feral Domination, for our listeners, is an optional effect, so you do not have to use your Eternal Guardian to battle other troops.
Yep. Sorry, so for the people who don't know, Feral Domination, constant that allows any troop with attack or defense 5 or greater.
Or defense.
What?
That's important, because I guess a lot of people didn't know
Yes. Attack or defense 5 or greater to fight with one of the opponent's troops. So
It's one of those cards that has quite a few uses, but hasn't had a big splash on the meta quite yet. And so it's easy to look over and just assume it's not a great card, or it doesn't have much playability in Constructed, when there's apparently very good decks that can abuse it.
So also worth saying too, if you are playing I-decks and you hate playing against Buccaneer and Time Ripple and all of those, that is a great card that punishes people for playing those cards.
Turn every troop into a come into play effect. That's an excellent point.
Yep. But anyway, I did end up losing game 1, but then I won games 2 and 3. I took out the Braves because the games go long anyway. I took out the Squirrel Titans, and I actually took out the Zakirs because I was bringing in Snapdragon, Argus, and Gobbleglade Witch. The Witch is probably obvious because I want to take care of Soul Marble and Solitary Exile. Argus is one that hasn't been popular for a while, but I played it as a trump to, again, the armaments if they turn it into that, exile if they need to do that, or just whatever large troop that they happen to have played. The one that maybe raises people's eyebrows is the Snapdragon, because that's your, 15th pick draft or whatever it is, I don't know. Anyway, that card, it was aimed for the Angels and for the Vampire Kings that these decks end up playing, and it usually will be able to survive them unless they already have the Soul Armaments active. It also can answer Drew's Walker if they play that in their list. This player actually did end up having the Drew's Walker in his list as well. So it's able to either kill them or at least trade with one of those big threats. So I ended up winning.
I assume he played Dimid?
Yeah, he was playing Blood Diamond with Dimid. That's right.
This is one of those things where if you see Blood Diamond and Dimid, you should be waiting for Drew's Walker to come out at some point.
Yes.
Early on.
Yep.
I mean, they just work so well together. It's a powerful effect, so make sure you have an answer.
And yeah, games 2 and 3, after I made those changes, won them pretty easily. Rootfather does a lot of work in that matchup as well.
Have you done much gem swapping with him, or is he good as is?
No, I mean, I don't think I ever changed it, because pretty much every matchup, there's a lot of matchups where you're trying to race, or they have, I should say basic speed removal, and you want to be able to have the speed most of the time, the direct damage. You don't usually need to have the spell shield, for example, as much as you need to have the direct damage. I would say, and I haven't done this, but if I had more evasion in my deck, like if I was playing the Jadeems, I might consider the +8/+8, but I don't think I would even do that. I mean, it'd have to be, I don't know, it'd have to probably be a different deck than this one, or a different take on it than what I'm doing right now. I'm doing speed and direct damage pretty much every matchup.
All right. So what was your overall record after 6 rounds?
I finished 4-2. I lost to Hapson, who I think finished out in the semifinals, and I lost to Karate Vader, who he lost in the finals. So.
Okay. Well, good showing. So do you know what your place was?
It was top 16. I forget if it was 15th or something like that. But it was top 16.
Much of top 16 feels the same unless you're number 9, and then number 9 you get to be bitter about.
Yeah, pretty much.
Which I believe our Peace Tinker was number 9 this time.
I think so, yeah.
JJ was 14th.
Okay.
Well, good showing, JJ. The other deck we want to talk about, the other performance, is Penta. So Penta, tell us about what you did.
Okay, first off, it's not what I did. This is the team's deck. The team had decided to play this deck a long time ago, which is why it made a lot of appearances at the sealed VIP. Not the sealed, the constructed VIP recently. And I did very little modification or tuning up on the deck at all, so no credit here to me at all. It is affectionately referred to as the Salt Shaker within our group. But
is that because it plays Salt Harpy?
No, although I do have a deck that's called the Salt Shaker in my deck list because of that. No, it is called that because it is a unconventional deck that tends to. I of my 6 opponents, of which 3 beat me, and I feel like this is an important fact, 4 of them were very distraught with the situation that they were, mostly because the whole tournament had multiples of these decks and they'd played against them a couple of times, but because the deck, people don't like feeling like they got cheated by certain factors. None of this was actually cheating. The deck is just a 150 card Jankbot deck, which is running a bajillion 4-ofs, all of which you would normally find in a traditional Gore Knight matchup. Maybe not all of. There's Burns, there's Benjamins, there's Highlands Magus, which to fill out the curve. There's Jags in there that maybe wouldn't normally make it. There's some Azure Fate. Just a bunch of good cards. And I tried explaining this to one of my opponents. Like, the shard distribution that we built has the same percentage of opening hand, like, reaching the right thresholds as a regular deck does, with give or take a few percent. So we're not getting insanely lucky by drawing shards. The percentages are the same. It's the exact same odds, but people don't like that mindset.
I don't think it's the shards people have problems with from that deck, though.
The shards were a huge thing people had issues with.
Really?
The other thing people had issues with was when you swing with the Jankbot, for those of you that haven't ever played the card, it takes 3 cards out of your deck and plays them for free. And if you were to go down a traditional Gore Knight list, you would find a bunch of cards that you would not like to see played against you in quick succession. In the entire deck, there are probably 2 things that we can hit that we're not thrilled about in every scenario, but otherwise it's just awesome hitting them. In one of my games, I hit 2 Zodiac Divinations with one of my activations, which I was pretty happy with. Earlier on in the day, we had seen a team member on a featured match hit a Mastery of Time, a Gore Feast, and then on his next swing, another Mastery of Time, or something. It was some craziness. Like,
he played one as well.
Yeah, and he played one as well. And the thing is, like I said, all of the cards in the deck are cards that you don't want to see hitting the board a bunch. So, like, if you swing with Jankbot, it will very usually produce results. And the best part about it is a lot of times you swing with Jankbot into... Alright, so if I was playing against JJ as an example... well, actually, I think this happened specifically against Aaron Squire. This might just be me making words out of my head here, but in one of my matches, I swung with Jankbot into a situation where I was 100% going to lose my Jankbot. Like, the blocks were obvious. And I got a Time Ripple and a Crackling Bolt. And I was able to remove enough blockers that my Jankbot got through for free. And then his next turn had to be replaying those options. I'm not actually sure that was against Aaron Squire, but, you know, my matches went a lot like that. One of my opponents stabilized... Blood Diamond player stabilized by playing a Vampire King, and my attack, he was on 4 health. My attack with the Jankbot and one other troop would have left him on, I think, 1 health after the math, had he blocked with the Vampire King and something else. Oh yeah, the Xanthoth's Inquisitor he had on his board. Yeah, no, it wouldn't have reduced his health, but I would have cleared the Xanthoths.
He had 1 health and then left, if I recall correctly.
I think when I got the screenshot, he had 1 health left because I got... Oh yeah, maybe he did have the 1 health left. It's beside the point. I hit 2 Crackling Bolts off the top, so I was able to just target his face and kill him with the Crackling Bolts. Which was... I mean, nobody's ever happy when that happens. Like, of all the cards in my deck, of which there were like 130 left, to pull 2 like that, you know, people don't like that a lot. My matches were a lot less exciting than JJ's. I started the day off against a team member running the same deck. I destroyed him in game 1. He destroyed me in game 2. And then we played a reasonably close game 3. Nothing really exciting happened. There were no Jankbots. And game 3, he gore feasted me to the face with Royal Falconer in play. And I was like, okay. Round 2, I lost to... Rehnquist. I don't remember what Rehnquist was playing. Like I said, I got about 20-30 minutes of sleep before the tournament, so I don't actually have a good grasp of everything that happened today. I'm trying to remember if it was... That might have been the... No, it wasn't the Blood Diamond player. That was a little later. Might have been Blood Sapphire? That's beside the point. Again, 1 and 2. I lost 2 of the 3 games. And I lost one of the games, and I suppose this is an issue. My opponent drew his didn't draw his hand, but had realized that he'd picked the wrong deck inside the first match. And my opening hand for my first, like, had we not restarted, which you have to draw your hand before you restart the game, even though we had discussed restarting before that situation, you still can't forfeit out of a game without drawing your hand. It's just not something the client lets you do. My opening hand would have been amazing, so I think I could have pulled that match off if we didn't have to restart the first game, but that's beside the point. Round 3, I played against Aaron Squire. There were very close matchups. Every game, I believe, all 3 of our 4 games, I was about to say. All 3 of our games, he had a Filk on turn 4 or 5. And Filk was just, like, always the answer to my board, and it was really frustrating. I kid you not, it was like Cerulean Mirror Knight into Highlands Magus, into double storm cloud and a crackling bolt and a shard, and now I've got 1,000 things. And he's just like, Filk. I was like, oh, okay. I guess we won't do anything fun today. The third game that we played, I managed to, like I said, get some really lucky draws with Jankbot, and I think that's how that ended up going. It was a close match. A lot of bounce managed to save me from his otherwise impressive set of troops. I don't think he ever had a chance to play a finisher like Zakiir on me, which was more to my benefit. And in our second game, he rolled me by, like, I believe he got 2 Eye of Creations off in a row and just got huge troops. It was nuts. Round 4, I played against Revolution, who was playing Blood Diamond. I already explained how that match went. That was the Blood Diamond player I got the double Crackling Bolts for the win. It was very lucky. Round 5, I played against Breskshire. Again, I won 2-1. I don't remember a whole lot about the match, but I believe he was playing another aggressive Ruby Wild deck, and I think he got shard stuck. We had a lot of complications with our matches. In game 1 and 2, both of us had different shard issues. Game 2, the game 2 he rolled me. I don't think it was Aaron Squire that rolled me. Game 2 of our match, he was the one that played like turn 4 and 5 eyes and just got like Arborean Rootfather and Arborean Rootfather, and I was just like, okay, never mind. Game 3, he had a phone call. I had to answer the door for Girl Guide cookies. And 9 minutes later, I think I won on like turn 4 or 5 because my curve was insane. I went turn 1 shard, turn 2 shard cloud, storm cloud, into turn 3 storm cloud into shard and Crackling Bolt, and then I popped the cloud. No, it was only the single cloud. Forgive me. So I popped the cloud. I had 2 the drop that draws you the card. Yeah, splashy. I had 2 splashies on board. He had a Heat Wave in hand, chose not to play it, used his Running Deer charge power. I burned him at end of turn, remembering that I Crackling Bolted him in the face earlier. I Gore Feasted with Polka Power on turn 4, left him at 1 HP. On his next turn, he used the Heat Wave to remove the 2 splashies, and I was holding a second Crackling Bolt the entire time, which I obviously couldn't have played. I wasn't trying to bad manner him. I was out of resources on turn 4.
Slow
so on turn 5,
rolling Penta is what we call you.
slow roll. I definitely slow rolled that game though, because I spent 7 minutes at the door answering, like, dealing with girl guides and running back like, oh, excuse me, little girls, I have to go and click a button on my computer so I don't lose a very important online trading card game tournament. And they were very adorable selling me cookies.
Did you buy an
and
extra
I was
box of cookies for their patience?
I bought far more Girl Guide cookies than I need, which I usually do. We have a small town, and this is a little off topic, but just the Girl Guides are expected to make the same as like their sisters in other neighboring areas, which have literally like 50 times the population of our town. So helping them out is the nice thing to do, and I love cookies. And round 6, I played against Kaldheim, who was playing probably the exact same deck that he was playing at the Ruby Cup. And game 1, he destroyed me. I got stuck on 2. On game 2, I got a turn 4 jank bot out, and I made some pretty good plays in that particular matchup, but they were all defensive plays. Like, I used a Royal Falconer to block 3 X1s, just because I couldn't afford to take that kind of damage from his deck. And then in game 3, despite keeping a fairly defensive state up, he managed to get 2 construction plans Warhulks completed, and even though I was able to bounce one of them, the last couple of cards in his hand were all like verdicts and time ripples, so he was able to both verdict my time ripple and then time ripple my blocker to get the extra damage through. So I had a pretty unimpressive run, finishing out at 3-3, 23rd place out of 50, 48, something like that.
So I believe the tournament organizers said that there were 12 Salt Shaker decks, 12 Gore Feast decks, or Jank Feast decks. If that's true, that'd be 25% of the field.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if they're including the fact that Infamous Neo was on our Mumble shortly before the event started, and while he didn't plan on playing originally, he decided that it sounded like fun to play Jank Feast. Not necessarily Jank Feast, just his version of it. So he brought a 150 card pseudo Highlander deck to the tournament, where he was running singletons of every card aside from Shards and the 4 Jank pots.
Okay.
So I don't know if they were counting that in there.
Some optimal constructed strategy, by the way, is to watch out for those Girl Scouts. I accidentally bought too many boxes. Well, not accidentally. I had 20. I was like, okay, they're 5 apiece, we'll buy 2. And they're like, no, it's 4 apiece. It's like, okay, we'll buy 3. They're like, well, for 20 you can buy 5. I was like, I know how to. Fine, we'll buy 5. I know math, but we'll just buy 5 of them.
They'll catch you.
Yeah, not what we should be talking about, but still, I had to relate my experience.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about the top 8. And since I was not participating in the tournament, I watched part of it, but I do not have the bracket for the top 8. Do either of you know who were the 4 that finished in the top 8? I know Future was one of them.
Yep. So Future lost to Hapson in his matchup.
So briefly, those two are on the same team, and they played it out, and they're both running the Salt Shaker deck. We already mentioned they're slightly different variations, but we'll post a link to the top 8 as well for the podcast.
Right.
So Hapson wins there.
That's right. Frigid, who is playing the Mono Sapphire, I guess we call this a tempo deck, but it was Mono Sapphire with Reese. Had Bertram as his champion. He actually played the Pseudo Mirror as well against Small Fry, and Frigid ended up winning that matchup and went onto the semis. Kendrol played against Illidemery, and Kendrol lost that one. Illidemery went on. Illidemery was the I player, or one of the I players, I should say, and Kendrol was the Diamond Ruby. I don't know what we're calling this deck, but the Diamond Ruby mid-range deck. And Homunculus played against Karate Vader, and Homunculus was a Mono Blood Benoshi deck. Similar, well, no, not like the one I played round 1, but a Mono Blood Benoshi with Darkspire and Vampire King. And Karate Vader was playing the Ruby Wild I deck that we've talked about already, and the I deck won that matchup.
Okay, so let's start in the bottom of the top 8 and go through those 4 decks that lost and discuss anything that's interesting about them. So Homunculus would be the first one, and he lost to the Ruby Wild deck from your team.
Yep.
It's a little bit different. It has some of the Darkspire technology that you see in some Blood decks and some you don't, because Mono Blood is perfectly sufficient without it, but it adds a nice piece of mid-range playability by having the Darkspires in there. Anything you like about this deck? Not that I'm saying you dislike the deck, but any neat technology in it?
Yeah, Homunculus is another player that saw the value of Argus in this metagame. Actually played one in the main deck here. It is very good against the I matchup, and it's also good against other control decks as well. So that I like seeing that. He didn't play any others, just the one copy, but that's an old classic that hadn't been played for a while and does seem good in the metagame right now.
Didn't either of you guys play against him?
No, I did not play against him.
I didn't think so, but I just wanted to double check. Okay. Zentoth Inquisitor, he's running Brutality. Yeah, go ahead, Penta.
I think he avoided everyone on our team.
Did he?
Like, yeah, which like isn't like, oh, he avoided our team. What I mean to say is,
you
like,
didn't hear about this deck.
We had a lot of people in those 48. Like, there was like 10 of us or so, or more. Yeah. So for Homunculus to have made it the whole way without encountering somebody that was in our team chat seems really. He played Hapson in round. Well, they ID'd in round 6. Okay.
I say
Okay, well it's still pretty crazy.
the other thing that's notable about this deck, and I've seen other people who've done this as well too, but having Benoshi with Vampire King is a great combo. It will already survive the Crazed Squirrel Titan by itself if that's all that the iDeck player has, for example. And it obviously presents a big clock, an evasive clock, and it's hard to deal with a big, huge Vampire King. So that's one that I've seen other decks take advantage of as well, and it would certainly be good here with the Monsoon and the Darkspire synergy to go with the Benoshi. So
It's also an illegal deck list.
what's illegal?
He was playing a 60... Well, it's not actually illegal. He was talking about it in chat. Homunculus himself mentioned this in chat. He submitted a 61-card deck list and was playing 60 cards the whole day because I believe his shards were off.
Oh.
So, I don't know how
the
they dealt with
23rd
that in the
yeah,
top
the
eight.
23 shards. Yeah. I know what you're talking
That's
about.
interesting. He also played Infamous Neo, who's now part of our team, but he was easily able to crush that 150-card Highlander deck in round 1 as a 2-0. Sorry, throw that out there.
It was easy, was it? I
It's a
think
2-0.
they were the... Okay, that's pretty easy. Oh, I just didn't remember what the... Because they had Infamous Neo on one of the featured matches, and he got stomped in one of the 3 games that I remember listening to. I remember the other 2 being kind of close and thinking that, like, that's got to get on somebody's nerve to know that your opponent is playing, like, mostly one-ups in a huge deck like that, and just, oh, here's the card I needed at this moment. It would be frustrating.
Did Kindrel make it to the top 4?
No.
Okay, so he's the next one on our list. He's playing the Ruby Diamond mid-range deck.
Right.
This looks a lot like Cyrus's deck.
The big difference.
Cyrus's deck.
It doesn't
gets
matter
credit
what
for it.
name you put.
All
It's a
day.
Ruby Diamond mid-range deck.
Cyrus's deck.
Anyway,
I'm just for the reference here. JJ wrote that list down, and Cyrus was very adamant about letting people know that it was a list that JJ wrote up. Like, tweeted about it, mentioned it while he was on stream the other day with us on the Ruby Cup. I don't think he has ever said this is my deck list. And we were joking about it earlier that, like, everyone was calling it Cyrus.
that is true because he's the one who's done.
And
quite
JJ's
well
just
with
in
it.
chat, just like, I could just imagine this sad little single tier running. Well, because nobody can actually take a full credit for any deck in Hex.
Right.
But Cyrus was the one who won the Ruby Cup with it.
Right.
So
I mean,
he's claimed ownership over it. He's basically taken JJ's deck list and peed on it, and now it's his.
there's no peeing on it. It was gladly given to.
That's
to
how
a
you
friend.
claim ownership of things.
Here's the thing. Quick aside. At the end of the day, everybody wants to play. I mean, we all want to play new decks. We all want to get recognition for, hey, I brought this really cool new deck to it. It did great. It stomped the field and have this big reputation boost. But you know what? From my perspective, if somebody else plays the deck and they do well with it, good for them. You know, and
no, absolutely.
and it doesn't matter.
this-
It actually, it was funny because somebody did mention something about me making the deck in the chat today, but it's cool that people hear about it and that Cyrus is giving me credit, but it's not a big deal. It's at the end of the day, we're all playing and he made the plays.
Man, if only you could pilot it as good as
If
Cyrus
only
did,
I
though.
could.
Why didn't you run that deck?
I do like the deck.
Speaking of Kendrill's deck, though,
Yes.
a little more
Whoa.
seriously,
Yes.
I want to
lot
make a
of
point
changes.
that
Mike, nobody wants
who
to
did
hear
write who wrote Elvis's songs? Yeah, no one knows. Okay,
I don't know.
go on.
Nobody's that old, bro.
Yeah, I don't know. Sorry.
You're the only one in here who ever even listened to Elvis.
I didn't listen to Elvis. What are you talking about?
Sure.
But the big difference here...
This is considerably different,
the
right?
big difference here is the main deck Zakirs instead...
And the reserves Tianos just chilling out
And the
there.
reserves Tianos and the 4 Shards of Fate to be able to justify going between whichever version that you're trying to play. And even Kendrell went as far as to put a Ruby Shard and a Diamond
Ruby
Shard
and a
both
Diamond
in the
Shard.
reserves as well, too, just to make it a little easier to play whichever one it is that he's decided to play. Also,
when do you think you bring in Tianost?
When he really needs to get rid of
That is your expert analysis there, folks. No,
Bringing it to you live from the tournament floor and looking at Kendrill's dick, we see the Tianost in the reserves likely being brought in as a replacement to Zakiir in matchups where directly removing one thing from the board is more important than the absolution of keeping Zakiir alive on the board. Likely in scenarios where we're seeing Soul Marble or Darkspire Tyrants or Priestesses or anything that you can benefit from voiding multiple copies of at once.
Specific examples. I was trying to avoid you see, what you want to do is reduce your opponent's health to 0. That's how you win games.
Well, I did my best to give you my expert analysis, so now turning this around and throwing the mic back at you, JJ, what else do you have to say about this deck?
I think Tianost is coming into the same kind of...
A dragon?
Yeah, it is a dragon, but I think it's coming into the same kind of matchups where you would want an Argus, right? I think it's the same kind of thing that you have there, where we're playing against control, or if you're playing against the eye decks that have one big thing that you really need to do, especially the eye decks. It's really good because the eye decks typically don't have a lot of ways to answer the flyers. Tianost usually will get through, and it can take out the Wrathwoods.
All of the Arboreans.
Arborean is a little different because sometimes they can get you with the speed. But
well, no, because if you get rid of one Arborean Rootfather, then you get rid of all Arborean Rootfathers. Tianost is not just get rid of one dude on the board. Tianost removes all of the card with the same name in all zones when it does that.
That's not really... What I'm saying is, if somebody has Rootfather already in play, it's probably already done its job. It was talked about on... I'll spoil it a little bit here. It was talked about a little bit on Frigid's stream, and he's right. The magic health total in the eye matchup is 16. You don't want to drop below 16 if they have 6 or 7 resources, because that is the point at which Rootfather can come into play and kill you out of nowhere. And multiples of 16 if there's a possibility of an eye coming and possibly getting multiple Rootfathers. That's kind of the magic health total. And so if they've already played a Arborean Rootfather, chances are pretty good that it's already done its job. So I would take it out if you were...
Yeah, I don't think you'd pull it in against that.
Yeah. I mean, you would take it out if that's the best target, obviously, but I think most of the time it's intended to be for, like, the Wrathwoods, right?
To be fair, in a vacuum, I think Tianost would be a better card against Arborean Rootfather than Zakiir, though. Of all of Zakir's cards...
Yep. The Void...
one of them answers... Arborean Rootfather, whereas every time you swing with Tianost it does. So maybe that's... I don't know. That's just talking about in a pure vacuum situation.
Right.
But yeah, Ruby Diamond, almost the exact same list as Cyrus's and JJ's.
Going forward, I'm kind of surprised to see a Diamond deck in a meta that's dominated by both Ruby Wild, Eye of Creation, as well as Gorfy's decks, that you're not seeing Blinding Light as a standard sideboard card for Diamond decks.
Yeah, I think people fall... Okay, so this is just my personal opinion on certain cards like this. I think that right now in the meta, Blinding Light and even Immortality are hugely valuable cards that protect you against very specific matchups, both the Gore Feast that you're used to seeing all the time and the rise of the more popular aggressive style things. So as long as your deck has a way to deal with sustaining the board after that massive swing, it's important to have one or two ways to just deal with that initial swing. And what Dimmed decks are usually trying to do is just get their health total out of the way so that they can't be brought down in that one fell swoop, which also kind of adds to Tianos' value here, right? You were talking about 16 being the health total to worry about, but if a Dimid player has already gotten to like 30 health, there's a fair chance that the Eye player will try to play a single Arborean or hit. There's a lot of things they would try to do with that Arborean, and then Tianos could respond by getting rid of all of them, which would be a safe situation. Doesn't matter. But people, I think, look at cards like Immortality, which is essentially a very unplayable card in Draft, which is a more popular format right now in Hex than Constructed, and Blinding Light, which I think is good in Limited, but you don't see people play it very often. They kind of fall into that trap where they're like, well, it's an action, you play it, and then all it does is save you for the turn.
Yeah, I agree with you about...
actually really important.
I agree
right
with
now.
you about Blinding Light. I saw Neo play it on stream, and it was really good when he was playing it as well. People forget it's not just saving you a turn. Sometimes if you've got troops in play, it can be removal spells as well. So actions. Sorry.
I mean, it's often a 2-for-1 or better, especially in limited, but also in Constructed.
And if it saves you 16 health when your opponent plays an Arborean Rootfather, then you're having a good time.
That's for sure.
So the next deck on the list, Mike.
Oh, are we there yet?
We kind of fawned over Diamond Ruby for a while, so I figured we should.
The other thing, I think you're right about Blinding Light, is that the people see it as not just saving you for a turn, but also the dream of, or the hope, or the desire of your opponent swinging with everything and then being able to swing back and winning, and they don't do that, and so they are like, oh, this card's not as great as I thought because I didn't win the game after I played it. But that's not how you should be looking or evaluating the card.
And the other thing is, there's a lot of times where you can actually catch your opponent in that, where they feel like, oh, I can swing into this board because if all he has is Repel, I'll be okay. And I'll win if he doesn't have Repel. And then your opponent plays Blinding Light, and you're just like, oh, no.
Yep.
Not that.
So as you said, Small Fry is the next deck on the list. Excellent. And
Small Fry.
And Small Fry.
Small Fry is running the Bertram Cragraven Mono Sapphire?
Correct.
Yeah, Mono Sapphire tempo. Just kind of like an interesting, straight up deal with opponent threats deck. Interestingly, an idea I was toying with for a little while was getting Thunderbirds back into the meta, and it looks like he has some in his reserves. But it's the typical try to win with Dreamers and stop your opponent from doing anything deck. Did pretty well here, clearly, although I honestly find it a little bit surprising. I'm not trying to disregard the player skill involved, which was obviously a factor, but I think that a lot of decks right now don't mind having their troops bounced. Because of Mono Sapphire's power in set 1 for a little while, people realized that you need to have troops that are okay being bounced. And so now we've got those, and Sapphire doesn't have a lot of hard ways to deal with troops outside of those counter magics.
So this was a typical Mono Sapphire deck, probably back in July of 2014, made popular partly from El Demry doing some good work with it, taking down Tournament, and a lot of it plays around having Eldritch Dreamer on the board, as well as being able to just outright win from a Dreamer and maybe another troop and hitting a few mastery times in a row. It gets better in set 2 by having access to the normal Sapphire set 2 cards like Verk the Ancient Kings and Reese. But what we're seeing is what the meta shifted to by August of 2004, and then certainly by the Blood Cup and after set 2 was released, is a more control-oriented, I bounce my own troops with Yesterday as well as Buccaneers, and keep on playing Grok and kill you with Grok over and over again. This is a much more mid-rangey tempo version, which actually JJ wanted to talk about, so I'm sorry if I just took away some of your steam.
No, you're fine.
Tell me more about this, JJ.
Not a problem.
No, don't.
the big innovation here, I love it, is the Bertram Cragraven. So Bertram's a champion that overall in the constructed scene hasn't been very popular. But it's very good in this deck because of Reese in particular, but it's also okay as just a way to buy a little bit of health and a little bit of time against the aggressive, especially Poké decks. what I really like about this is he's playing a bit of a fish style of deck. For the people who don't know what that might mean, you stick a threat, and the rest of the game is a mini game of just trying to continue to attack while keeping your opponent off balance. You don't actually gain true control. Typically you're not able to maintain true control with these decks. You just keep them off balance long enough that you can win. And the reason that...
What do you mean by that?
So what I mean is, for example, the easiest way to show that is like Dreamer with Mastery of Time, right? So you might have a curve that is, let's say, Mirror Knight into Countermagic or Buccaneer into Dreamer into Mastery of Time. And the Dreamer itself will continue getting in for damage because it's unblockable, obviously, and in this case it's drawing card as well. And then the Mastery of Time allows you to continue getting in for additional damage. If you do have more than one troop that can attack, it's better, obviously, but it's all about just trying to continue keeping the small advantage that you have. Works best against the decks that are slower, and in particular, I would guess, and I didn't go back and look at this, but I would guess Small Fry probably played against I several times, and this is a type of deck that should be very good in general against the I decks. The one thing, well, let me just say this: the Buccaneer is very good because it can put all the expensive troops back into their hand. The I decks a lot of times rely on Scraptech Brawler to play something earlier than you should be able to, and putting it back into their hand is a pretty big deal, especially costing one more. The Countermagic is the best way to answer a lot of these things. You never have to take the damage from the Arborean Rootfather if you're able to counter it in the first place, and Verdict is able to either stop them off of the ramp if you really need to, or more often you're going to stop the Eye of Creation itself there. So it's very good at setting up a game state where you either tunnel Reese on 2, or you lead out with the sort of curve like I talked about in the first place with the Mirror Knight, the Buccaneer, and the Dreamer, and you just keep them off balance and play a few more Countermagics until you're able to seal the deal with your relatively small troops that you have there.
The important part of using those Countermagics like that is maintaining card advantage just for a little bit.
Right.
All you have to do is connect with that Dreamer once or twice and get 1 or 2 extra cards in your hand, and then you start to get to play the game where you're forcing your opponent to try to play something that you can't answer, but almost all your cards are answers. So,
right.
Or alternative ways to find answers.
Buy you a little bit of time until you're able to kill them off with this unblockable troop.
So I think I already have Penta's vote on this. I could be wrong, though. But JJ, if you're going in and wanting to play Mono Sapphire deck in the next tournament, do you prefer this fish-style deck, or do you prefer the Infinite Grok type of deck?
I would say it depends. I generally prefer playing a deck more like this if I'm going to play Mono Sapphire. Reese is a card that is very strong, and I've played in other decks as well. And Reese plus Countermagic is definitely a very powerful start to a number of different shells that you could go with. You could go Ruby Sapphire with Heatwave and Crackling Bolt. That's actually one of the decks that I had messed around with and testing as well too. That's pretty good in this metagame because you have the Heat Waves that can deal with the fast decks, as well as the Countermagic and the tempo game from Reese and from Buccaneer. You could also go with it into maybe, Diamond Sapphire, like what we've seen in a lot of top 8s. It fits very well with the Soul Marble game of, okay, I'm going to hold up Countermagic, and if you don't do anything I care about, then I'll level up, my Soul Marble. Or you can tunnel the Reese in that same deck too.
The Infinite Grok versions I've seen since the Blood Cup have included Reese just because he's such a powerful card. Penta, am I right in guessing you prefer the one that's more reliant on Grok as opposed to these early consistent plays? I'm a Grok fan personally. That's partly why I'm asking. This runs Grok as 2, it's just a different in-game.
Yeah, I think I prefer having wide sweeping answers when I'm playing control, like Grolk, like something that says, okay, now what? Now what do you do? I don't think that can really get a foothold in the... Like, this isn't really an answer to your question, but Constantina, while not showing up in any of these decks, does exist, so Grolk has lost a little bit of power now, because if it does get prevalent, people could just have Constantina, who is already a fantastic 3/3 for 2, but also just nullifies Grolks entirely. I think the wild side of things hasn't been explored entirely, with people just looking at Feral Domination and going, "Oh, this is a card we should put into some decks." Seems odd to me, because I remember seeing that card and thinking, "Oh, that's really good." There's situations where I prefer one or the other, but to answer your question wholeheartedly, I think I'm a Grolk style player. Grolk. The whole Grolk yesterday deck that was happening a little while ago.
So you would not be playing Dreamers, and most of the variants don't play Dreamers anyways. You don't play Mirror Knight. Stormcloud also gets cut just because it's a lot less troop heavy. And you get things like Archmage Drinlock in there. You get Displaced Peak as well, which is weird with 23 resources and only 20 Sapphires.
Ancestors Chosen.
Yeah, Ancestors Chosen, which can really mess up control if they don't have a direct answer to it early on.
Which, by the way, Ancestors Chosen is another one that would have fit in pretty well with this style of deck, too. Because it's another one of those, I'm going to stick this early on when there's not much going on, and then I'm going to hold up Countermagic for the rest of the turns or tempo you out.
Yeah,
it conflicts with Mirror Knight, and with this deck you want everything to hit Mirror Knight if possible. But, I mean, it's a good card regardless, but yeah.
Yeah, well, that's part of the thing, right? Like, is you want every target to be great. I actually don't think I would remove the Elder Streamers, but everything else you said, I generally agree with. The Elder Streamers are something that I tend to find. I guess it's just like my favorite card. I get like that's such a bad justification.
It's a good card,
but like I really like Elder Streamer, and maybe I'm just swayed because like I've been playing a lot of Sapphire. A Sapphire Wild, not necessarily the popular form going around, but like obviously I've talked about this on stream for like 100 weeks in a row now, but I've been toying with Sapphire Wild just in my idle time, and I really like Spell Shield Elder Streamer, like a lot. This minor Wild Orb in it of Conservation, I believe, making an Elder Streamer a 3/3 unblockable Spell Shield for 4 is pretty intense value, and that doesn't necessarily matter for Mono Sapphire, obviously, but even a single card draw generally makes Ultra Streamer worth it.
Well, in the current meta, it's actually a little bit better than what it was when Mono Sapphire decks were excluding it, which is there's fewer Zentoth Inquisitor decks going around.
Exactly.
And that's kind of was a hard answer to Dreamer that just made you sad. Of course, Sapphire Wild, you don't have to worry about the Zentoth Inquisitor, but just as a Sapphire player, if there are fewer of them, you're pretty happy about that. The fourth player that ended up in the top 8 was Future, and it's a similar deck to the one Penta was playing, so we don't really need to talk much about that. He was playing against Hapson, which is the same deck as well, and Hapson ended up on top. And actually, Future is playing the Mass Polymorph Dingler. I guess he just didn't cite it in against Hapson because Hapson was talking about in chat. No, he said something in chat about, I forgot, about Polymorph Dingler or something along those lines, and Hapson's like, I told you should play it, it's such a good card. That's my impersonation of Hapson, apparently.
Yeah. Hapson... Oh, there it is. Hapson's playing 4.
Yeah, he's playing 4. I just noticed that.
I said it was a singleton earlier because our list has a singleton in the reserves. But no, he is straight up playing 4.
4 in the main
that's
deck.
Insane.
Yep.
Crazy. So then, Frigid is next.
Well, no, Frigid is going to be last.
Okay.
He won.
Right. We're talking about the people who lost first.
Yes, I was just realizing that that's what happened.
Spoilers.
Yeah. So Hapson ends up losing against who?
So Hapson lost to, I believe it was Karate Vader.
Okay. Yes, that seems right with what I recall.
Yep, playing the, again, Karate Vader playing the Wild Ruby eye deck that we've talked about already.
Okay, and Papson's playing the Gorefeast deck, which that's the conversation I mentioned earlier where he said you should be playing this, and I guess it was playing 4 main decks opposed to playing 1. And of note, Hapson's the one who originally came up with the Gorefeast or the Salt Shaker deck for the VIP tournaments and 4-0'd with it, and then everyone else on the team kind of jumped on, with only G Prime getting another 4-0 that weekend. So he was, if we were the Zerg, he is our Queen of Blades that directed everyone to play the Salt Shaker deck this tournament. And then that leaves the final matchup in the top 4 as Frigid versus Eldemri.
Right.
Eldemri is not on your team, correct?
No.
He is a Russian player who played Ruby Wild independently. And this is not... Oh, it is an Eye of Creation deck, so it looks a lot like the one we see previously. What are the big changes between his deck and the ones you all were running?
It actually looks card for card what Kind Mime played to the top 8 last at the Ruby Cup. So I don't think there's a single difference. Yeah,
okay.
I don't think there's anything different there. Just played again to another
the
top
deck
8.
is good. Yeah, play what wins. So then that leaves final, which is how do you pronounce his name?
It's actually he's a German player, and I actually say it wrong. But Karate Vader is what I say, but I think it's actually
Karate Vader.
Vater? I don't know. I'm not good with the German.
So he ends up playing Frigid.
Yep.
And we've talked about his deck, so that leaves Frigid, which is the amazing Mono Sapphire deck that's kind of like the other Mono Sapphire deck, except it has no reserves.
Right.
He played a 0 reserve deck and took down the tournament, which is impressive. Any major differences between his deck and Small Fries, which he knocked out earlier?
So first, I believe Frigid...
123 shard deck.
Yes. I believe Frigid also wanted to give credit for this deck to Havoc. Said that he got the idea or the deck list directly from him. And other than that, though, I guess he just decided he didn't want to play with reserves today. He did say he wished that he had the Thunderbird several times on the day, but he played with no reserves at all and ended up winning the entire thing. The matchup, I ended up watching because Frigid actually ended up going through 2 different Ruby Wild eye decks. The one game that he lost against Eldemri was because he didn't make a Bertram bot to be able to block a potential Rootfather. And the Rootfather ended up killing him from, like, I forget if it was 15 or 16, but it was a relatively high life total. It was just like, bam, dead out of nowhere because I forgot about that one card and didn't make my blocker that I could have made. But otherwise, most of the game, most of what I remember was Frigid being able to stick a threat and hold up Countermagic and Verdict for all the times where it mattered. But the difference was in the finals. Game 1, Karate Vader had I think it was either turn 2. It was either turn 2 or turn 3, where he played the Pharaoh Domination, and he ended up killing, I think he had 2 Pharaoh Dominations, and at one point he ended up killing like 4 or 6 troops off of those 2 cards with just the regular, I want to say Wrathwood Master Moss and maybe a Rootfather that came in play and cleaned things up, something like that. It was very good in that matchup, and it was even to the point where, Frigid's holding Buccaneer in his hand, and he's saying, I don't want to play this except to bounce maybe a Howling Brave, because I don't want to put any of those troops back into his hand now.
So Feral Domination does get printed twice. I mean, you play it. Play a troop with 2 copies of it?
Yes, you do get to battle 2 different troops. So, for example, there was one time where Filk got to kill a Dreamer and the Cerulean Mirror Knight. No, it wasn't Mirror Knight. It was... I forget. It was some other 1-power guy. Or no, it was Mirror Knight, because, it was just enough to where he could kill both of the troops and survive it.
I mentioned this twice now about the 23 shards in a deck. The one thing why I keep on knowing that is because not just the peaks, but also the Wordle style Infinite Grolk deck really requires you to get to 5 shards to lock in your game state. And this one's a lot more, I guess it's more aggressive earlier. It's not the true control of the Grolks, and so you can get by with a lower resource count and not be stuck on trying to get to 5, and of course it's not running white, and so that frees up some space in building a deck by running 23 instead of 25 or 26 shards like the other Mono Sapphire deck does.
Right, with 23, 24, you should be able to hit your first 3 to 4 shard drops, and yeah, most of this deck you're able to play off of 3 to 4 shards.
Yeah. Well, that is it for the top 8. The next topic is dealing with a deck that JJ didn't run. Did you guys want to say anything else about the tournament before we did that?
No, just in general, thank you to the Hextex crew, if any of you listen, for putting on the event, as usual. It went very quickly this time. Like a lot of matches finishing just like well ahead of the time, and I think they did a very good job overall.
Alright, so our next topic is this deck where JJ last week is like, yeah, I want to come in on Saturday, we'll have the podcast after the tournament, you'll hold it up just for me, and we'll spend the entire podcast talking about this new deck that's just going to blow away the rest of the tournament. And instead he's ran the deck we've been seeing since December, which is Ruby. Wow. Eye of Creation. So tell us about this deck that you're going to be exposing to the rest of the world for the first time.
Okay, so I think other people have probably either thought of this or tinkered around with it, but this is a combo deck. I actually played a similar version to this in one of the constructed VIPs, although I didn't 4-0, I 3-1 with it. In that tournament, I ended up losing to Gore Feast, and spoilers again for this one. That's why I didn't end up playing it, because I expected a large portion of the field to play Gore Feast decks. Game 1 against that deck is pretty abysmal. But in any case, talking about the deck itself, it's a combo deck. What it does is it will have either Archmage Renlock plus Sight of Sun, or Sight of Sun plus Chimes of the Zodiac, to be able to continue playing a lot more cards in a single turn than you should be able to play, and create infinite Masteries of Time. And for people who haven't seen the deck in action, the way it works is you have Scheme. The first time you scheme, you usually want to create more Mastery of Times, although some certain scenarios will make something else. You'll take the extra Masteries of Time, and you'll just draw them, hopefully naturally, to be able to continue drawing cards with your Archmage Renlock, or use Sight of the Sun so that you can play the Mastery and continue developing with either more Chlorophyllias, or accelerating, or drawing more cards with Zodiac Divination. But the end game is you get to a point where you have a Chimes in play, and you can, if you ever get Chimes in play, now all of a sudden all of your Mastery times double, all of your schemes double, and most importantly, all of your Crash of Beasts that are in the deck will double. You can get to infinite turns by scheming for more schemes, and then using those schemes to create more Mastery of Time. And it sounds pretty convoluted, but it's once you get the Chimes in play, it basically almost always continues comboing off at that point. You also can combo off relatively easily if you have Archmage Renlock plus Sight of the Sun sticking around. Those two usually will be able to get it, although it's not quite as consistent as Chimes with Sight of the Sun. That deck, but again, ultimately it ends up winning with infinite Crash of Beasts, or not infinite, a arbitrarily large number. I think I've had hundreds of Rhinos in play.
Okay, so assuming you had the matchups you had today, how do you think your deck would have fared?
Sure, so let me just look at this again. So the Mono Blood deck, I think I probably would have beaten that one. The Eye deck, I do think I would have won, even with the Jadim. Usually, because we did test that matchup, the Wild Sapphire deck is usually able to combo out before the Eye deck is able to win. Generally speaking, I can sometimes combo out as early as turn 5, but usually turn 6 or 7 is about a lock against that deck. And Against Blood Ruby, Extinction Feast, if he draws the control half of his deck, I think I would beat it. If he draws the Gore Feast half of his deck, I think I probably lose that matchup. So I'm not sure. We'd probably call that a loss, I guess. The Life Gain deck, I think I would have beaten because it's just too slow. The Jank Feast deck, I think I probably would have lost. And then the Blood Diamond Control, I think I probably would have won. So probably a similar result looking at the matchups that I ended up getting. I think I probably would have ended up with a 4-2 matchup, or 4-2 record at the end of it.
So to make the deck viable, what has to shift in the meta? Or will it be viable?
Yeah, it's really all about Gore Feast. The reserves, which are posted there on the show notes, is a 12-card transformational sideboard, or reserve plan, for the Gore Feast matchup. You gotta have... I ended up having Buccaneer, Time Ripple, and Eldritch Dreamer with the Rhino Gem. It's not reliable, but the best way I have found to win with this deck against Gore Feast is to create a stream of 3/3s, whether that's either with multiple Crash of Beasts or Eldritch Dreamer with the Rhino Gem. Assuming that the Eldritch Dreamer connects once and you master your time, you should win in those games. And in this deck, you can play the Eldritch Dreamer relatively reliably on turn 3, and then the Mastery on turn 4. So it's doable, but it's still not a matchup that I like to play with this deck.
It's going through the deck and it's like, oh, I'm missing 3 cards. Apparently I only have 1 scheme. Maybe I need to buy those up before the podcast hits the airwaves.
Scheme is one of those cards where it only matters if you're trying to go for the control route, because if I'm not trying to combo out, it's one of the first cards that goes.
Actually, Scheme's at a reasonable price at the moment, which is good because it's one of those cards that people value highly since it has a lot of potentiality to it, but if it's not, it's high despite the meta not being favorable for it. So Eye of Creation was one of those cards too. For a long time, it would sit at $6 or $7, but no one was playing Eye of Creation for nearly a year. Well, maybe 10 months, 8 months. But it was for one particular archetype of a deck, and so if you want to play Eye of Creation deck, you needed the expensive Eye of Creation, and it always kept the price high. I'm sure Eye of Creation right now is much higher than it was. Let me see if I'm right. Eye of Creation, $8. Yeah, that's much higher than it was a couple months ago. Kind of a tangent.
Yeah, overall, I would say Scheme is a card that you only play it if you have a very specific purpose. If you're playing some type of like combo deck like this, for example, or if you wanted to do like a Ragefire combo, or what's the berry one? I'm blanking on the name of that one. The Escalation Sapphire.
Chronic Madness.
Chronic Madness, thank you.
Yeah. Every time I hear berry, I think like a raspberry. And so if they ever introduce berries into a game, then that's just going to make everything more complicated. So, yeah, you're testing mostly about Gore Feast. Gore Feast made the matchup not look as good as it was looking a week or two ago when we originally talked about the deck. And given the prevalence of the Salt Shaker deck, you probably made the right call, even if the outcome was practically the same. Because by going through the same matchups, of course, you could have won a game earlier or lost a game later, and that would have changed who your opponents were, and so you wouldn't have the same matchups. You might have seen, you only saw one of the Salt Shaker decks, right?
I only played against one of them. But there were 2 in the top 8 as well, so again, if in a different universe where I played that and made the top 8, playing against the 2 Salt Shaker decks probably would have lost to one of those. So
okay. All right. Well then, any thoughts about that, Penta? Before we move on.
No, I like the deck. I had a couple. I don't know. I have a lot of Sapphire Wild lists, and I had a couple that were pretty similar to this. So I'm glad to see it more solidly worked out and tested.
Did you have any with Scheme in it?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I have a lot of things that I was trying with Scheme. Not just the Sapphire Wild, although the Sapphire Wild I always keep going back to. I tried a bunch of things with Ruby Sapphire Scheme, and a lot of things with Blood Sapphire Scheme, but the Blood Sapphire Scheme seems the weakest and tends to focus on using this. The schemes don't have like an immediate purpose. They have
long-term
pick what's best at the time purpose, which is really weird. And in the Ruby Sapphire scheme decks, I can't pull myself away from Skarns, and even though Skarns are trash and I know it, I can't help but adore them, so I just keep putting them in there, and I'm like, why do I keep losing with these amazing Skarns? Oh.
In my opinion, the linchpin card is actually my favorite card in the entire game, which is Archmage Renlock. If you're playing some type of scheme deck, you need to be playing some number of Archmage Renlocks in the deck as well. Pretty much every deck that you're going to want to play scheme in, he's going to be a tremendous card advantage engine for you, and also offsets the card disadvantage from scheme itself. So I think those two are best buds if you're going to build any kind of scheme deck.
I just like Renlock in general. He's viable in even some troop-heavy decks, and that's part of the reason why I like the other Mono Sapphire builds, is just because I feel happier when Renlock's on the board, even though Dreamer in those decks probably nets use very similar card advantage with Cerulean Mirror Knight.
Yeah, they're pretty similar.
Yeah. So, this is unrelated to the deck, but would you consider Scheme to be pack one pick, one pickable in draft?
No, I don't generally want to play scheme in draft.
Really?
I'd have to do something really weird. Like, I'd have to get...
I do sometimes. I don't know if it's the right play, but the ability to make 4 copies of a piece of removal is usually enough for me to trade scheme for at some point, and you can combo with it with certain other cards. So,
yeah,
the kind of decks that I would play scheme in, I don't mind having one deadish draw if I don't have exactly what I need.
That's often the debate, is whether or not it's worth it to skip, say, turn 2 to get 4 more copies of one of your best removal cards. And JJ, you're saying no?
Yeah, it's taken too much tempo, and taking a turn off, I mean, it's only turn 2, but it's still just not something I generally want to be doing in draft and throwing away a card to make my future draws better.
I think probably a good argument against it is that if you're going Sapphire, there's a good chance you want to go Dwarves or Humans, and those are not overly favorable to missing turn 2, maybe?
I think the deck where, and I haven't tried this, but the deck where I'd probably be most inclined to want scheme would be if I'm playing some type of berry deck, and if I had something awesome like, well, I mean, just like Penta said, multiple removal spells would be great in that deck, but also being able to do the Chronic Madness if I got lucky enough to get that in pack number 3. Something like that would be pretty awesome.
I think something went awry if I'm playing a berry deck, but yeah, okay. I mean, that means that you're probably picking up Scheme as a pack 2 pick 1 or pack 2 pickup if you're happy with it, or even a late pack 1 pickup if you're going in that direction already. Well then, let's go ahead and move on to our pack draft then and talk about what we would actually pick from this pack of cards. So, our pack for tonight is a rare Constantina. Our uncommons are Construction Plans Bot Shop, Electroid, and Necrophage Sensei. And our commons are Excavation Hulk, Grand Squirrel Titan, Immortal Tears, Wounded War Hero, Giant Mosquito, Subterranean Spy, Reactor Bot, Crackling Rot, Rune Ear Burrower, Armatron, and Chimera Guard Outrider. Let's have JJ pick the first card for us.
So, I do like Constantina.
Wrong.
Okay. You don't like 3/3s for 2?
No, I have no idea. I just said wrong.
Yeah,
before I knew what you were going to say. In case that was lost in translation, I just felt like being a
I like Constantina. I like Crackling Rot quite a lot, and I generally... Yeah, I think a lot of drafts I go into looking to play Blood or to play Dwarves anyway, generally. So I would probably say out of this one, yeah, I'd probably take the Constantina and see what else I got out of the rest of this pack here. And my second pick would be the Crackling...
Whoa. We're doing snake drafts here.
Oh, okay. Alright.
You'll do the last 2. So, Penta, do you want to go second or third?
I'll go second.
Go for it, then.
Yeah, I'm just going to follow up with Constantina. A 2-drop 3/3 with Steadfast is incredibly hard to deal with on the board. You're not passing any wild cards that are going to make anyone freak out and go wild. So, I mean, I guess you can't really expect to get much back from this pack. But you're going to let the Dwarf player fight over the Electroid, the other Dwarf player fight over the Bot Shop. The human player is going to cry when they see this pack. The Benoshi player is probably going to pick up the giant mosquito, maybe something else. There's the Crackling Rod for the blood player. There's the reactor bot for the aggro player. There's the Armatron for the fun police. And, there's a bunch of stuff in there, but it's not stuff that... None of it can actually really deal with a Constantina on its own, so...
And your second pick?
My second pick would be the Electroid. I think this early into the draft, I can start trying to hope for the crazy dwarf shenanigans that happen, and if I can just take every Electroid construct Foremen, Gearsmith, and reactor bot, charge bot that I see, I should be okay. Likely I'm getting the Armatron back in this pack, or the reactor bot, maybe the Subterranean Spy. I can gauge how the pack is going at that point.
Alright, so I'm going to pick some things that are what you'll already disagree with. My pack one pick one here is Construction Plans Bot Shop. I just love the card draw from this card. It is... granted you're paying 3 for each time you draw a card, but there's not a lot else in set 2 that allows you to draw as efficiently. Sapphire has the Zodiac Divination, but being able to go through a big chunk of your deck, something that's consistent from turn to turn, and sometimes it'll reduce the cost of stuff, but I rarely rely on that. I'm just more than happy to pick this up early on, and the only unfortunate part about this is sending the signal that Electroid... It is to my left that dwarves are available. I hope I can beat some of that out, and in all likelihood I'm going to get the Armatron on the pack back, because a lot of other really good cards are in this pack. Or I guess if I'm really sad, maybe I'm picking up the Immortal Tears here when it comes back to me. But I'm just more than pleased to pick up a bot shop early in the draft. And the reason why I'm avoiding Constantina is that I'm really playing her on turn 2, unless I go Mono Wild, and Mono Wild feels a lot less consistent as a draft strategy in 2-2-1. If I'm in any other shard, I can't play her on turn 2, and so she becomes maybe a turn 3 play sometimes, probably more reliably turn 3 play if I draw her early, or turn 4 play. And there's nothing bad about playing a 3-3 on turn 3, or a 3-3 on turn 4 with maybe something else. It's just I'm not feeling that this is strong enough for me to go into wild or devote to wild quite yet, unless I'm in mono wild. I don't think I can force that. If I see her as a third pick, I'm definitely picking her. If I see her in second pick on this pack, I'm now choosing between Electroid, Crackling Rod, Constantina. I think Wild pairs better than Blood in 2-2-1, and that Wild works well with Wild Sapphire, Wild Blood, Wild Ruby's fantastic. Blood, I'm okay in Blood Ruby, though I haven't really played that many Blood Ruby orcs. It's a fine draft strategy, just doesn't seem to work out for me. Blood Wild is fantastic. Blood Diamond can be okay. It gets overdrafted with humans. It's great removal. It is removal. And then there's Electroid, who's tempting me to go dwarves. I think second pick, I will be picking the Electroid here, just because
I disagree.
I want to go dwarves.
You told me I would disagree, and I'm disagreeing.
And then my third pick is going to be Constantina, because the third pick Constantina is a clear signal that I can go wild. And I'm really sad about passing that Crackling Rod, because that means I may not be able to go wild. Well, I still could go Wild Blood. Yeah, I'll pick a third pick. So Penta, you get your third pick.
Yeah, the bot shop. It's got to be the bot shop. I just... The card draw that it offers is usually way better than people give it credit for. Now that we're back on my pick, though, I do think the Necrophage Sensei is a really strong card. I just never really have the right deck for it. So I'm not sure if maybe I should be picking it earlier and then making the deck around it.
The problem is that it's not a turn 2 play, and so it's cheap, but you don't play it then.
Yeah. You're playing it... See, the thing with Necrophage Sensei, right, is like when we talked about the card when it was coming out, I think what we looked at very specifically was the fact that Necrophage Sensei was supposed to be the answer for blood to some extent to extinction. Yeah. As if extinction did need to be answered, but not necessarily like that way. The thing is that in draft, you're playing it more as a control style. I'm flooding the board, and if you answer that, I'll play a Necrophage Sensei. The thing is that if you can flood the board in draft, you generally win. So the Necrophage Sensei usually sits there dead. So you need a way to get troops into your graveyard, and it's not really there. So, I don't know. I just thought it was worth talking about as an uncommon for a second.
Sure. JJ, picks 2 and 3.
So, I'll give some props to the Necrophage as well here for a second, because I think there's actually 2 different bunny decks in draft that you can do. And I've had some... And obviously you can't know this when you're in pack 1, but if you're the Blood Cauldron Ritualist style of Blood Sacrifice bunny deck, I mean, the Necrophage Sensei, I've had one draft where I had 2 of them, and on average they were, I don't know, 5/5 or 6/6 by the time I ended up playing them. It was later. It was like a turn 5 play, and I played that plus maybe a removal action, something like that. So it wasn't really a 2-drop, like you've already said, but it's if you're in the Sacrifice Bunny deck, it does end up being pretty good. That being said, I don't generally want to commit to something like that early on because it's pretty narrow on whether it's going to be good or not. Generally speaking, I want to go with the cards that are going to be useful in a wider number of archetypes. So for me, Crackling Rot ends up being my second pick. I love taking removal early on, especially premium removal like Crackling Rot, and if I don't end up playing worst case scenario, I took it away from one of my opponents, but I like playing Zared, Destroyer of Fun, many oftentimes in draft, and Crackling Rot with Zared is very, very good. I think my third pick here would end up being I think I would probably go Electroid out of this pack. If I'm going for the dwarf deck early on, I generally try to favor towards the more aggressive dwarf deck. I like the Construct Foremans, which fits in well with the name of this episode, but Construct Foreman, Electroid, the more aggressive style, maybe with Crank Rocket and Recovery Specialist as well, is the type that I generally prefer over the Bot Shop. Bot Shop's a good one too, but I would probably take Electroid over it, I think.
The aggressive dwarf deck is fantastic, especially if you can pull it together. By picking Bot Shop, my justification is just it allows me to float between the two, because it gets played in either one, and the slower, more controlly one, or in the aggressive one, it gives you an avenue to draw cards, because the biggest fear is not drawing the cards you need to win the game, like any aggro deck. And so that gives you a little bit of out, but I perfectly see why Electroid might be a higher priority than the Bot Shop. And weirdly, Bot Shops come around late. Electroids don't so much. And I think that's wrong, but as long as people are doing it, maybe it's I who's wrong and you play that to your advantage.
That's part of the reason I took the Electroid so early. Is like a lot of people will see Electroid as a signal, whereas they'll just see Bot Shop as a strong card, not a signal necessarily, just like, oh, there's a strong dwarf card still in the pack. And the thing with Electroid is, because when you take that first Electroid, a lot of people hate to have a dead pick. Even though it's not a good idea to ever be married to any sort of pick like that. Like, if I take that Electroid, I should, and I make this mistake on stream all the time, but at least I'm consciously know I'm making it, and I talk about it when I'm doing it. If I take an Electroid, and then there's let's say a Crackling Rod, a Crackling Bolt, and a Reactor Bot in the next pack, of those 3 cards, the Reactor Bot is the worst, normally. But sometimes you're just like, well, I better take that Reactor Bot so I can guarantee that I'll be able to play my Electroid. So you end up cutting people out of dwarf so hard that the guy who took the Bot Shop then sees nothing.
The other thing is that people still don't know what that card does, the Bot Shop, and they sometimes still think it's a filter that says if it's a robot, draw it, otherwise put it back in your deck. And I'm not sure why people think that, but I've encountered people saying that more than once. And it's odd. I guess they just assume that's how the card has to work. Because drawing it is too powerful.
Yeah, I had another draft, exactly what you were saying earlier, where I actually think I got Construction Plans Bot Shop like 7th or 8th out of a pack, where I was a pretty aggressive dwarf deck. And I took it, obviously.
Did it make your deck?
Oh yeah, it definitely made the deck. It was good, but it's one of those cards that people don't take it highly.
So, as we conclude, do you have any final thoughts, JJ?
Thanks again to the Hextex for hosting the tournament. I know Penta and I love being able to play in the tournaments as well, and it was a lot of fun. And
nothing. Wait! No! Nothing is stopping you from playing in the Ruby Cup or any of the Cup series. You don't pretend that you are held back.
I know that I could.
You want to shoutcast.
I know that I could. I enjoy shoutcasting with you quite a lot. It's a lot of fun to watch and to talk about what people are doing. And analyzing stuff on stream is a lot of fun to me. So you're right. I absolutely could play in Sapphire Cup if I wanted to, but I don't want to. I want to do the shoutcasting for that. It's a lot of fun.
Even with that $250 holla prize, yo?
Even with that prize, I would still love to see what people brew up and bring to it. I hope it was a little bit 56. That'd be awesome.
More impressive when we were able to say, and our 2 shoutcasters with their recent top 8 performance, as opposed to our 2 shoutcasters with their recent top 32 performance out of 48.
You know, I have considerably more Hextex open points than you, Mike.
Yeah. That's
and I'm going to hold that over
I was
here.
just going to say that, we got 2 top 10 Hextex open players. How about that?
Remember those tournaments we played in, JJ? Yeah, I sure do, Nick. Yeah. Oh, internet high five. That was pretty good.
Penta, final thoughts.
We talked about this at the start of the podcast, and maybe you guys missed it, and I kind of slept through the middle of this podcast, so maybe it was mentioned again and you missed it again. But that's beside the point. There's a really good chance that Corey's going to be on next episode. Yay! Spread the word. Get that out there. I'm super excited for that. And even more excited than that, like we were just mentioning, the prize pool for the Sapphire Cup, now involving a lot of gold dollar signs, spinning GIFs of people wearing elaborate necklaces referred to as the blings. So make sure you're out for that. It's going to be really awesome. And like was mentioned, potentially only 256 slots available, so maybe you want to sign up now.
Excellent. Well then, my name has been and is Michael Allen. You can find me in-game at Zubrin, on Twitch and Twitter at Zubrin_alpha. Nicholas Petrowski's Pentachills on Twitch, Twitter, and in-game, and JuzamJedi is that everywhere. Our sound engineer for this episode is Mark Elysian Duze, and for any updates on us streaming, when we post a show or other happenings in the Hex community, follow us on Twitter at 2turnsahead, or leave a comment on the show's post at 2turnsahead.com, 5shards.com, on Reddit, or even email us at 2turnsahead@gmail.com. Finally, if you want
or the YouTubes
automatic updates, I keep on forgetting the YouTubes. We have the YouTubes, and this podcast can even be listened to on the YouTubes. Finally, if you want automatic updates, please subscribe to us on iTunes, and if you feel inclined, give us a positive rating on the iTunes store. Rating this podcast will give other viewers a better chance of discovering the podcast on iTunes and helps us grow the Hex community. Thanks for listening.